Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to talk about scrub pythons, a snake that I have been fascinated by for many years now, and dare I say, DM Exotics has quite the reputation for scrub pythons. Now, I got my first animals in the early 90s, and I bred them in the 90s. I also bred them, I think the last time was 2014, I believe. Several successful breedings to my credit, and it's just an amazing snake. Now, without sounding egotistical, I think I have probably seen as many, if not more, than a lot of the people out there that are working with scrub pythons. Now, this is mainly because I was working with them before they were popular. In the 90s, nobody cared. It was something that was largely ignored and actually kind of obscure. And I was already working with wild-caught animals way back then. Then, of course, the evolution of DM Exotics put me into the seat of importer. And I carried that interest with me, and I pushed my suppliers to get me lots of scrub pythons. And I've seen a lot. I've seen them on the farm, seen them in the wild, and obviously many animals have come through my hands. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that are kind of pushing themselves to the forefront, and you know, a lot of those people, they had to get their animals from somewhere, right? So I've been really down with scrubs, putting them out there in the market, selling them to you guys, and all of that. Now, a lot of people now are importing just whatever's popular, whether or not they're into those animals. If they have any kind of enthusiasm for them, that's a whole nother story. I look at my animals a lot differently. I study them, colors, patterns, localities, all of that stuff. I take everything into account. So we're gonna get into this, you guys, and while I'm talking, so you don't have to stare at me, I am going to be flashing a lot of photos and a lot of video taken over the past decade or more, and give you guys something to see. So I hope you guys like this one. Let's get into it. Scrub pythons. So scrub pythons are no longer in the genus Morelia. They are now in the genus called Simalia. And there are 5 species. King Horneye is the Australian one. It also happens to be the largest one. They are not in the hobby. Occasionally you'll hear a rumor about maybe one here or there in Europe, but for the most part, I'm gonna say that those are not in the hobby. If they are, they're being real quiet about it, and obviously for good reason, and I'll let you figure that out. I have keeping experience with all 4 of the other species, but this video is going to be more closely focused on Simalia amethystina, which comprises the majority of my personal experience as well as breeding. Now, scrub pythons are semi-arboreal, and they have bodies that match. They are quite long, but they're also not extremely heavy-bodied like some of the other larger constrictor snakes. These snakes will eat a variety of prey, and they have a very long striking distance. They also have very long teeth, all of which are adaptations for overtaking prey, not missing strikes, being able to grab birds and difficult to catch prey items and hold on to them. Simalia amethystina have a large range, and they vary drastically in appearance, from the classic banded barneck types in the north to the busy patterned or patternless phenotypes in the south, which can also come in a range of colors from very dark, very light, even gold, yellow. Localities are commonly known from importers or online resellers, but there are some reliable observations from herpetologists, birders, and even YouTubers like myself who have documented living specimens on location. So scrub pythons actually are one of the species that we have had some luck observing in the field. You guys, we're on our way to the ferry. Look at this scrub python crossing the road. It's a really big one. Check this out. Look at the size of this. Big barneck. Oh my goodness, look at this, you guys. We are in Waigeo scrub python, big barneck. Look at that. In Raja Ampat in West Papua, we have seen scrub pythons on Kofiau Island, also on Waigeo Island, and in Sorong we came across some roadkill animals. Now the roadkill animals are really nothing to be proud of, and it's actually kind of sad, but it does allow for some ID purposes, being able to look at the pattern and match it to what the hobby considers Sorong locality animals. So it is beneficial for that sort of thing. So for captive care, this is basically just a tropical snake that requires tropical conditions. They have arboreal habits, as you know, so you should provide some height and branches or platforms for climbing. For hides, you could do grounded hides or elevated hides, or both. Preferably, they're both readily used, so they are a staple for me. Now for feeding, I'll usually start with live rat pups or live fuzzy mice, whatever the appropriate size food item is, of course. And the animals that don't feed within like a reasonable period of time, you want to remove the food because they'll defensively strike non-stop at whatever they perceive as a threat. So whether it's foot traffic with people or if there's a live rodent in that box, they're going to probably strike relentless at it, and they may damage their nose. So you have to pay attention, kind of make adjustments as you go. Any animals that do not feed, I will try scenting with birds. Usually I'll do frozen thawed, something that's not so imposing, and I'll scent the frozen thawed with quail or chicks and that sort of thing. That almost always works. Sometimes the animals are a little bit stressed out and don't want to feed. Maybe we need to wait for a shed or something along those lines, but eventually most of those animals will kick in. They're very aware of their surroundings, so some take a little bit longer than others, but we have a really, really high success rate with them. And then my personal preference is to switch everything onto frozen thawed rodents, but sometimes you just have to be prepared for it not going exactly as planned. So having extra different types of prey items in your freezer is always a good idea. So captive breeding scrub pythons, not the easiest task. There's a good number of people that are doing it, but the demand for captive bred far outweighs the supply. There's still a lot of imported and farm bred scrub pythons coming into the country and hitting the market. They're just not easy to breed. Now for me, when I bred my scrub pythons, I never really temperature cycled other than just doing the standard nighttime drops. Now I discussed this in my previous videos, but the nighttime drops are always affected by the outside temperatures. It's seasonal thing. So the thermostats are always programmed to drop about 10 or 12 degrees, and I have them on 12-hour night cycles. So in the winter, when it's colder outside, it does definitely drop the full 10 or 12 degrees, but in the summer months, the ambient sometimes doesn't make it all the way down because it's warm outside. So by doing that, there are seasonal cycles. Another thing that I discussed in my previous video with other species is that I palpate the females for follicles, and that kind of just tells me everything that I need to know, when I need to do it, and all that sort of thing. Restless males, females hugging heat, basking upside down or twisted, changes in appetite, that sort of thing. The animals will usually kind of tell you what's going on if you're observant and paying attention to what you see. So this challenge is part of what makes scrub pythons special, because if they ever reach the level of commercial overproduction that you see with other species, I think the overall care and respect for this species would greatly suffer. It's already a big mystery as to where the thousands of retics produced annually are ending up. We should have hundreds of thousands of 18 to 20 foot retics in the hobby, but we don't. And that sounds like a topic for a whole nother video, but sometimes I look at it like a blessing that scrub pythons don't breed readily like some of the other overproduced animals out there. So something else that I came across, I've noticed it, I've experienced it several times, might be a little controversial, it's just a theory of mine. My scrub pythons, I have had some very, very selective females that they were like very partial to certain males, and other males they would reject. So for example, maybe I wanted to use a particular male because of his demeanor or his pattern or whatever, and the female just rejects the male. And I know which male is a sure thing, and I just give up after a while and put in the male that I know that that female likes, and then they breed. So it's happened to me a bunch of times. So I think a lot of times they're very just selective of their mates. And you can kind of see it in other breeders, where somebody may be producing a specific locality every year or every other year, like on a regular basis. But then all the other locality scrubs that they're working with, they're missing every year. They're not breeding them. So to me, I feel like some of those breeders have pairs that are very partial and receptive to each other. And that's why they have very good luck on a regular basis, and they miss on the other animals. So my adults would breed, my females would ovulate, they'd lay eggs, all in the standard way that other pythons go through the reproductive motions. Clutches could be small or large in number. Eggs are usually quite large in size, and the incubation times vary like all other snakes depending on what temperature you choose to incubate them at. But I usually went for about 87, and then that would take them about 80 to 85 days to hatch. Now, babies will hatch out a dark red color, and some may have some pattern showing while others will appear patternless. While there are some patternless animals, the typical pattern does set in over time, and the red color starts to fade into their adult coloration. Babies are usually snappy and defensive, but I have found that this is what makes them easier to get started feeding. Timid animals that are hesitant to strike, they're sometimes the more difficult to get feeding, so I always welcome the defensive nature. And pretty much with all of my animals, I don't really care if they're tame or not. I keep these animals because I like them, and that was the most important thing for me, is just that they're feeding and doing well. Now, babies are pretty decent size, so I would start off with offering live fuzzy mice or small hopper-sized mice. It seems to work best, but I always have day-old quail chicks in the freezer just in case I need to get a little bit fancy. Babies seem to switch to frozen thawed pretty easily once they kind of feel that hunger. All right, guys, it started to rain, so I'm up underneath a tree to finish out this video. So my final thoughts. I can't tell you where my interest in reptiles came from. It came out of nowhere. No family members, nobody got me started in this. This is just something that developed in me, and it never left me. And obviously now I'm 51 years old, I am an adult, and I am still deep into it. So this is something that has never left me. I'm still very, very much interested in it. Now, for some reason, when I was young and studying and getting these fascinations with certain species, I don't know why, but I felt like seeing the animals in the wild was the thing that finished off the whole process. The whole fascination wouldn't be complete until I saw those animals in the wild, at least where it's possible to see those animals in the wild. Some things are so rare or come from places that are at war or super dangerous to go to, and like it's just not possible for that. But I am so enjoying being able to travel and seeing these animals in the wild. I know it's not a priority for everyone, but for me, for some reason, you know, reading these old books about different herpetologists and people doing studies and seeing animals in the wild and all that sort of thing, even meeting some of the old school breeders, like the names of people that are still around even after all these time, people that I used to go and talk to and learn from, like in the 80s. Those are the people that I wanted to emulate. I wanted to like emulate the herpetologists doing the field work and seeing animals and documenting animals in the wild. And I also wanted to be a successful breeder. So I kind of, in my mind, both of those two ideas merged together, and that's basically what I've done and what I am doing and have no plan to change and continue. Like, those are my goals. So we are headed to Papua soon. Hopefully And we have many, many more trips as COVID restrictions start to drop. We are very, very inclined to see lots of these animals that I'm enthusiastic about in the wild. It just completes the cycle for me. It's just incomplete if all I see are animals in deli cups and captive in cages. Like, that's not where it's at for me. That's good for the breeder side, but that's not good for kind of fulfilling the whole thing for me, the whole concept. And so anyway, I did not intend to have the travel thing come like sort of in my later years in life, but of course with work obligations and all that sort of thing, I just didn't have the time to be able to travel until I'm retired and in a better place, you know, financially and everything else. So that's pretty much what's going on. So that is going to do it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please don't take these videos the wrong way. We are not the be all end all, my way or the highway. There's a lot of ways to get all of this stuff done. We just happen to have a lot of knowledge, experience, field observations, and that sort of thing. So we provide to you guys all of that information. You can actually apply a lot of the information to other species and other animals. It is somewhat basic, and you can use that information when it comes to other animals that you may be working with. So that is about it, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Be safe, and we will see you in the next one. Take care.